Hello, Dr. Fox here. We're going to talk today a little bit about learning as it is seen in psychology. Now, I've got to say first off that psychologists are weird when it comes to learning. Usually, what we think about is things we learn how to do or knowledge that we gain, and that's part of it. Um, and there's a differentiation here between what's instinctive, what we just automatically know how to do, which humans actually don't have a whole lot that comes to us naturally like that. So instincts and reflexes. If a doctor hits the point on your knee where the neurons come together in a certain way, your foot's going to go boing. Um, that's a reflex. Your elbow, your funny bone, is a reflexive area. Babies are born with certain reflexes. um, those don't get us very far once we start walking around and doing stuff. Instincts, why do the humpbacks come back to Hawaii every year? Well, that's probably instinctive. They don't have travel agents. So, how do these more complex things happen? But those are generally considered not to be learned in the way that we're going to talk about learning. So, learning in the case of psychology is just about change in behavior or knowledge resulting from experience. So, something happens, you make associations, you gain new behaviors, and it could be conscious or unconscious. And this will come back around when we get to chapter 15, perhaps uh, when we're talking about pathologies. Okay, so associative learning, this is making connections between stimuli or events. So something happens and you begin to associate it with something else. Now, that's a really broad statement. And I'm going to actually stop here and let you watch a little bit of another video from Phil Zimbardo, who passed away in 2024, one of the big figures of psychology. But this goes back to Pavlov in the 1800s and something that was a complete accident. He was trying to study digestion, and I'll be darned that dogs learned how to sell. Well, they associated the sound of an assistant coming their direction with the food they were about to get. And so they began anticipating food arrival by salivating, which is what he was actually studying. Okay, so there are about 4 terms that I want you to pay attention to in this video. One is conditioned, conditioning. We have stimulus, we have response, we have conditioned, we have unconditioned. Unconditioned, excuse me, you don't need any training or experience. You are getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner with your family. You smell all that good food. You don't need to be taught to salivate. That's unconditioned. The smell is an unconditioned stimulus. With the dogs, the idea they were about to get food, unconditioned. Response, that's the salivation or whatever else it is that happens with the creature. So stimulus, response, conditioned, unconditioned. So before conditioning, it's unconditioned. After this process where you learn to associate these things, that becomes conditioned. So the bell classically in classical learning, classical conditioning, the bell becomes a conditioned stimulus, or the sound of the footsteps of the assistants approaching to give the food to the dogs becomes a conditioned stimulus. It's not the thing that actually is causing the response, but once that conditioned stimulus begins to elicit the response, then it becomes a conditioned response. Okay, so let's watch that video.